If Oppenheimer impressed you, Wernher von Braun is really going to blow your mind. I'm going to break down to you how he went from being a little boy with a passion for astronomy to one of Nazi Germany's leading rocket scientists. And also his career after the fall of the Third Reich is quite a surprise. Chapter 1: Early Life and Education. Little Wernher is born on the 23rd of March 1912 in the small town of Wiersitz in the province of Posen, Kingdom of Prussia, then German Empire and now Poland. His father, Magnus Wernher von Braun, was a civil servant and conservative politician. He served as Minister of Agriculture in the federal government during the Weimar Republic. His mother, Emmy von Quistorp, traced her ancestry through both parents to medieval European royalty and was a descendant of Philip of France, Valdemar of Denmark, Robert of Scotland, and Edward of England. He had an older brother, the West German diplomat Sigismund von Braun, who served as Secretary of State in the Foreign Office in the 1970s, and a younger brother, Magnus von Braun, who was a rocket scientist and later a senior executive with Chrysler. With Wernher being 3 years old, his family moved to Berlin. This is where his passion for astronomy, the space, and rockets started. Also thanks to his mother, who gave him a telescope. He was inspired by books like by rocket pioneer Hermann Oberrath or by Fritz von Opel and Max Weyler. Space travel had always fascinated him, and from then on he applied himself to physics and mathematics to pursue his interest in rocket engineering. In 1930, von Braun attended the Technische Hochschule Berlin, where he joined the Spaceflight Society. In spring 1932, he graduated with a diploma in mechanical engineering. His early exposure to rocketry convinced him that the exploration of space would require far more than applications of the current engineering technology. Wanting to learn more about physics, chemistry, and astronomy, von Braun entered the Friedrich Wilhelm University of Berlin for doctoral studies and graduated with a doctorate in physics in 1934. He also studied at ETH Zurich for a term from June to October 1931. Chapter 2: Involvement with Nazi Regime. Von Braun founded his own private rocket development business in Berlin, and through which made the first rocket fired by gasoline and liquid oxygen. In 1932, having caught wind of von Braun's rocket business, the German army connected with von Braun to pursue basic missile research and weather data experimentation. Von Braun said that the German government financed the development of test stands and facilities for experimentation in Darmstadt, Germany. In 1939, von Braun was appointed a technical advisor at Peenemünde Army Research Center on the Baltic Sea. At the time, Germany was highly interested in American physicist Robert H. Goddard's research. Before 1939, German scientists occasionally contacted Goddard directly with technical questions. Von Braun used Goddard's plans from various journals and incorporated them into the building of the Aggregate, a series of rockets. The first successful launch of an A4 took place on 3 October 1942. The A4 rocket became well known as the V2, which stands for Vergeltungswaffe 2, or in English, Revenge Weapon 2. In 1963, von Braun reflected on the history of rocketry and said of Goddard's work, his rockets may have been rather crude by present-day standards, but they blazed the trail and incorporated many features used in our most modern rockets and space vehicles. Von Braun's V rocket caused enormous damage and led to 9,000 deaths, mostly English civilians. He later commented on that, "I have very deep and sincere regret for the victims of the V2 rockets, but there were victims on both sides. A war is a war, and when my country is at war, my duty is to help win that war." On 22 December 1942, Adolf Hitler ordered the production of the A4 as a vengeance weapon, and the Peenemünde Group developed it to target London. Following von Braun's 7 July 1943 presentation of a color movie showing an A4 taking off, Hitler was so enthusiastic that he personally made von Braun a professor shortly thereafter. By that time, the British and Soviet intelligence agencies were aware of the rocket program and von Braun's team at Peenemünde, based on the intelligence provided by the Polish Underground Home Army. Over the nights of 17 to 18 August 1943, our AF Bomber Command's Operation Hydra dispatched raids on the Peenemünde camp consisting of 596 aircraft and dropped 1,800 tons of explosives. The facility was salvaged and most of the engineering team remained unharmed. However, the raids killed von Braun's engine designer Walter Thiel and chief engineer Walter, and the rocket program was delayed. Slave labor. SS General Hans Kammler, who as an engineer had constructed several concentration camps, including Auschwitz, had a reputation for brutality and had conceived the idea of using concentration camp prisoners as slave laborers in the rocket program. Arthur Rudolph, chief engineer of the V2 rocket factory at Peenemünde, endorsed this idea in April 1943 when a labor shortage developed. More people died building the V2 rockets than were killed by it as a weapon. Von Braun admitted visiting the plant at Mittelwerk on many occasions and called conditions at the plant repulsive, but stated that he had never personally witnessed any deaths or beatings, although it had become clear to him by 1944 that deaths had occurred. He denied ever having visited the Mittelbauer concentration camp, where 20,000 died from illness, beatings, hangings, and intolerable working conditions. Chapter 3: Surrender to the Americans and the Start of a New Career. Nearing the end of the war, Hitler instructed SS troops to gas all technical men concerned with rocket development. Upon hearing this, von Braun commandeered a train and fled with other technical men and took a location in the mountains of South Germany. After some time, von Braun and many of the others who made it to the mountains left their location to flee to advancing American lines in Austria. Von Braun and several members of the engineering team, including Dornberger, made it to Austria. On 2 May 1945, upon finding an American private from the U.S. 44th Infantry Division, von Braun's brother and fellow rocket engineer, Magnus, approached the soldier on a bicycle, calling out in broken English, "My name is Magnus von Braun. My brother invented the V2. We want to surrender." After the surrender, Wernher von Braun spoke to the press. "We knew that we had created a new means of warfare, and the question as to what nation, to what victorious nation we were willing to entrust this brainchild of ours was a moral decision more than anything else. We wanted to see the world spared another conflict such as Germany had just been through, and we felt that only by surrendering such a weapon to people who were guided not by the laws of materialism but by Christianity and humanity could such an assurance to the world be best secured." In September 1945, von Braun and other members of the Peenemünde team signed a work contract with the United States Army Ordnance Corps. On 20 September 1945, the first 7 technicians arrived in the United States at Newcastle Army Airfield, just south of Wilmington, Delaware. They were then flown to Boston, Massachusetts, and taken by boat to the Army Intelligence Service post at Fort Strong in Boston Harbor. Later, with the exception of von Braun, the men were transferred to Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland to sort out the Peenemünde documents, enabling the scientists to continue their rocketry experiments. Finally, von Braun and his remaining Peenemünde staff were transferred to their new home at Fort Bliss in Texas. The expected progress in their research and experiments didn't come as fast as expected. They had to deal with bad living conditions and lack of financial and materialistic support for their work. Von Braun remarked, "At Peenemünde we had been coddled. Here you were counting pennies." In 1950, at the start of the Korean War, von Braun and his team were transferred to Huntsville, Alabama, his home for the next 20 years. From 1952 to 1956, von Braun led the Army's rocket development team at Redstone Arsenal, resulting in the Redstone rocket, which was used for the first live nuclear ballistic missile tests conducted by the United States. He personally witnessed this historic launch and detonation. Work on the Redstone led to the development of the first high-precision inertial guidance system on the Redstone rocket. By 1953, von Braun's title was Chief Guided Missiles Development Division, Redstone Arsenal. Dreams about the moon, repeating the pattern he had established during his earlier career in Germany, von Braun, while directing military rocket development in the real world, continued to entertain his engineer-scientist dream of a future in which rockets would be used for space exploration. However, he was no longer at risk of being fired. As American public opinion of Germans began to recover, von Braun found himself increasingly in a position to popularize his ideas. The 14 May 1950 headline of the Huntsville Times, "Dr. von Braun says rocket flights possible to moon," might have marked the beginning of these efforts. Von Braun's ideas rode a publicity wave that was created by science fiction movies and stories in the hope that its involvement would bring about greater public interest in the future of the space program. Von Braun also began working with Walt Disney and the Disney Studios as the technical director, initially for 3 television films about space exploration. The initial broadcast devoted to space exploration was Men in Space, which first went on air on 9 March 1955, drawing 40 million viewers. NASA career. NASA was established by law on 29 July 1958. Only 2 years later, von Braun became the center's first director on July 1, 1960, and held the position until 27 January 1970. The Marshall Center's first major program was the development of Saturn rockets to carry heavy payloads into and beyond Earth orbit. From this, The Apollo program for crewed moon flights was developed. Von Braun initially pushed for a flight engineering concept that called for an Earth orbit rendezvous technique, the approach he had argued for building his space station, but in 1962 he converted to the lunar orbit rendezvous concept that was subsequently realized. During Apollo, he worked closely with former P&E-1 teammate Kurt H. Debus, the first director of the Kennedy Space Center. His dream to help mankind set foot on the moon became a reality on 16 July 1969, when a Marshall-developed Saturn V rocket launched the crew of Apollo 11 on its historic 8-day mission. Over the course of the program, Saturn V rockets enabled 6 teams of astronauts to reach the surface of the moon. After leaving NASA, von Braun moved to the Washington, D.C. area and became vice president for engineering and development at the aerospace company Fairchild Industries in Germantown, Maryland on 1 July 1972. In 1973, during a routine physical examination, von Braun was diagnosed with kidney cancer, which could not be controlled with the medical techniques available at the time. Von Braun helped establish and promote the National Space Institute, a precursor of the present-day National Space Society, in 1975, and became its first president and chairman. In 1976, he became a scientific consultant to Lutz Kayser, the CEO of OTR and a member of the Daimler-Benz board of directors. However, his deteriorating health forced him to retire from Fairchild on 31 December 1976. When the 1975 National Medal of Science was awarded to him in early 1977, he had been hospitalized and was unable to attend the White House ceremony. Von Braun died on 16 June 1977 of pancreatic cancer in Alexandria, Virginia, at age 65. He is buried on Valley Road at the Ivy Hill Cemetery in Alexandria. His gravestone cites Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament sheweth his handiwork. What an impressive life story came to an end that day. To this day, von Braun is a controversial figure. Some see him as a brilliant scientist who accepted the situation under Hitler out of opportunism. Others condemn him for the use of forced laborers and his loyalty to the regime. His transition to the Americans and his rise in their society is really incomprehensible from today's perspective. Do you think a similar story could happen today? Would states throw their morals overboard just to have a genius on their side? Let me know your opinion in the comments and stay tuned for the next historical biographies. Subscribe so you won't miss them.